Do you use a CGM like the Dexcom or the Freestyle Libre? And are you nervous about it falling off? Or maybe you're just tired of it falling off before it expires. Let me show you what you can do to make your Dexcom or your Freestyle Libre stick for the full 10 to 14 days. Because it can be done, and depending on your body, there are 13 different things that you can do to extend the adhesion time. And I say 10 to 14 days because currently the Freestyle Libre is a 14-day sensor, whereas the Dexcom is a 10-day sensor. I'm Christelle from Diabetes Strong, and I've been living with type 1 diabetes since 1997. I've been fortunate enough to have access to a CGM since around 2013, I think, and I've been using Dexcom CGM since 2015. But I've also had the opportunity to try out the Freestyle Libre 2, the Freestyle Libre 3, as well as the Freestyle Lingo. So yes, I've been there, I've done that, and I've found a lot of ways to really secure my CGM so that it does not fall off before it expires. Because when it falls off, that's just such a sad waste. Now let's get to it. I think there are 4 categories of things that we can do to make our CGMs really stick. And those are how we prep our skin, where we place the sensor, adding a little bit of extra hold, and then what we do while we're wearing our CGM. And when it comes to skin prep, I think there are 5 things that we can do to make our CGM stick. And the first thing is to not only make sure that your skin is completely clean, but also that it's completely dry. I think most people have the clean your skin part down, but maybe not so much letting it dry completely. I generally never insert a new CGM right after showering. So it's not that I air dry. I do dry my body, but the skin will still hold a little bit of moisture. So as a rule of thumb, I usually wait at least 30 minutes after a shower before I insert a new CGM. And the second tip is if you have a lot of body hair, it might be beneficial if you shave the area where you plan on placing your CGM. This might also make the removal of the CGM a little less painful. And the third thing that you can do, and since we're already cleaning the skin, you can just as well add this step, and that is to exfoliate the area where you want to place your sensor. But don't scrub so hard that your skin becomes red and irritated. Just do a light exfoliation to remove dead skin cells and prep the skin. And if you shave the area, this can also help prevent ingrown hairs. But I guess that's more of a beauty tip than having anything to do with CGM adhesion. I really like oil-based exfoliation scrubs. I think they're really nice, but that doesn't really work for prepping your skin for a CGM, because that will leave my skin really oily, which is great on an everyday basis, but placing a CGM directly on oily skin unfortunately often means that the CGM will fall right off. So when I prepare my skin to insert a sensor, I'll use a less oily exfoliator, such as, for example, this apricot scrub. Exfoliation can also help you with the 4th thing that you can do to help keep your CGM in place, and that is to remove old CGM residue. I do find that exfoliation is sort of a last resort when it comes to glue residue. I prefer to use baby oil or a glue remover, such as this one. If you use the baby oil, you just apply that to the skin and then you can work off the glue residue. If you use the glue remover, it's a little less work. You just apply it, wait a few minutes, and then you can dry it off. If you're prepping your skin for a new CGM, you obviously don't want to use baby oil because that's just going to leave your skin really oily, which just doesn't work for a CGM. However, I also would recommend that you move your sensor placement so that you don't try to just place a new sensor directly on top of where you had your last sensor. But of course, if you just prefer using an exfoliator, that'll do the job as well. And the 5th and final thing that I'm going to point out in this video that you can do to prep your skin so that your CGM will stick is to clean your skin with alcohol. I use alcohol swabs such as this one. I got that at my local pharmacy, and a whole box is, I think it was less than $2. Even when skin is clean, the alcohol swab can remove any oil from the skin as well as bacteria. So it makes the sensor stick better, and it also reduces the risk of infection. It's a 2-for-1. That was the first category where we talked about prepping the skin. Next category is placement. I found that where I choose to place my CGM plays a big role in how well it will stick to my skin. Dexcom G7 as well as the Freestyle Libre are both FDA cleared to be worn on the arm. That doesn't mean that it won't work in other places. It might actually work better for you and it might stick better. However, if you choose to wear it anywhere aside from the back of the arm, that is considered off-label use in the US, so it's something to be mindful of. I did ask the Dexcom COO about this in an interview I did with him here on the channel, and this is what he said. How about placement? So there's the official FDA, cleared placement is back of the arm. Can you place it other places? Are there any official Dexcom wording on what we call off-label wear?
Well, just by the sense that it's off-label, I can't endorse it. But
Fair.
we have found that the best sensor performance, you get that through all the different clinical studies we've done. We've seen the best sensor performance in the back of the arm. That doesn't mean it won't work somewhere else, but that's certainly what we advocate for is the arm. If you actually look outside the U.S., G7 is indicated for abdominal wear as well, but just not in the U.S.
I find that my sensors stay on for the longest when I wear it on my stomach. This could be because then I don't really bump it on things such as door frames, and it's just less likely to get ripped off. My take is that you need to find the placement that works best for you, both when it comes to accuracy as well as how well the sensor will stick. But there is one thing that we all have to take into consideration when we think about where we want to place our CGM, and that is that the skin has to be smooth. So when I choose to place my CGM on my stomach, I'll bend forward to see where my folds are. Folds or rolls or whatever you want to call them. We all have them. So I want to make sure that I don't end up placing my CGM within a fold. So it should be on a hill rather than in a valley. Super. So now the sensor is on the body, but there are also things we can do to add extra hold, and that is the next category. First is to add an adhesive barrier to the skin. One option is to use these skin tack adhesive barrier wipes. I don't love these, but I've heard from enough of you guys that you love them, so I did want to include it in this video. And they do add stickiness, I'll give them that. I just find it a little bit messy, and I don't love the idea of the needle being inserted through the adhesive barrier. The way to use these are first you clean your skin like we discussed earlier, then you apply the barrier to the skin and let it dry, let it air dry, before you then insert your sensor over the area. Okay, so two things with this. Unless you draw the outline of your CGM on your body, you most likely will end up with stickiness other places than just underneath your CGM. Also, if you like me don't love the idea of the needle going through the stickiness, you'll also have to draw the outline of where the needle is going to be inserted. Of course, this can all be done, it's just not my favorite solution. But what I do is that after inserting the sensor, I put pressure on the actual sensor for 30 to 60 seconds, and then I smooth out the edges to just make sure that that sensor is sticking to the body. Securing the edges was a little easier with Dexcom T6 just because there was more tape. But it's still worth doing, both with the Dexcom T7 as well as the Freestyle Libre CGMs. And the final step of the process before we run out in the world wearing our CGM is to add an overlay tape. If you use the Dexcom T7, it comes with an overlay tape. If you use the Dexcom T6, you should be able to request an overlay tape direct from Dexcom. However, if you wear a Freestyle Libre CGM, unfortunately, those do not come with an overlay tape. I don't love the overlay tapes from Dexcom. Unfortunately, they make my skin break out in hives. So I can't recommend those. I do really like the overlay tape from Skin Grip though. They have tapes for pretty much all of the CGMs and infusion sets. So that's for those who use insulin pumps. As you can see, you can both get tapes with and without cutouts. I'll leave a link in my video description, and you can also use code DiabetesStrong for 10% off the website. For my Dexcom T7, I prefer the overlay tape without the cutout. When I wore Dexcom T6, I would generally choose the one with a cutout because it's a higher sensor. I've never had to apply an overlay tape when I've worn a Freestyle Libre CGM. But if you want an overlay tape, according to the Abbott website, you should choose one with a cutout, as the little hole on top of the sensor should not be covered. Skin Grip is my preferred overlay tape because it really secures the sensor, which is the most important part for me. But it's also really easy to take off, and it doesn't irritate my skin. And then it comes in all sort of fun different colors and patterns. See if I can show you. You can also get it in more muted colors, skin colors, if you prefer that. If you're concerned about skin irritation, you can order a free tape and test it out, just to see if it works for you before you're buying a whole pack of tapes. And now we got to our last category, and these are 3 things that you can do while you're wearing your CGM so that it won't fall off before it expires. First up, after prepping your skin, securing the sensor, and all that good stuff, my main trick is to keep the sensor dry for at least 12 hours. That means no showering, no swimming, no running around in the sun getting all sweaty, up to 12 hours after you insert the sensor. That seems to give the sensor tape time to really adhere to the body before we run out and put it to the test. And the second tip, as you wear your CGM, and especially if you do not use an overlay tape, you might notice that the edges of the tape starts to lift. Main tip here is don't poke at the edges. Leave them be, or even better, and this is my last tip, glue them down using the skin tack. Add a little bit of skin tack and then simply smoothen out the edges. That will re-glue the sensor tape to your body. Now that we've done everything that we can to secure our CGM, let's talk a little bit more about placement as well as accuracy of Dexcom specifically. You can see mine and others' favorite Dexcom placement in this video. As you can probably guess from both the title as well as the thumbnail, back of the arm is not my favorite placement. And you can find a detailed video on Dexcom accuracy here. And I also talk about what can you do to fix your Dexcom if it's inaccurate. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.